What's up, world? It is Meli of Celestial Curiosities here with Maggie, and this is episode 7 of 8 of our Celestial Essentials course. Or rather, I've been using episode and class interchangeably, but it's really class 7 of 8, but also episode 7 of season 3 of the pod. Hello. Happy to have you here. Thank you for being here. Quick reminder at this point, you've heard us jibber jabber about what the Celestial Essentials course is, and hopefully at this point you're in it. You are flipping your page to class number 7 workbook pages, and you're studying and you're like confident in what the heck you're doing, because that's the point. This is our inaugural live 9-week course where you are going through these episodes that give you the lecture context information needed to learn how to take yourself from where you are with astrology right now to whatever that next level is for you, so that you can better understand yourself, the people around you, the patterns, the timing, the cycles of life. Come join us if you're not already in here. Besides all the things I just mentioned, the workbook, the live classes with us each week, heavy on the Q&A in there. You get to chitty chat with us on a weekly basis. There's also a 1-year membership to Luna, our amazing sponsor, whom we love. As Luna says, astrology is the story of your life, and Luna helps you live it. We're super proud to be sponsored by Luna, and they're visually stunning and extremely functional software. Thank you. Thank you for creating something that we love. Little deets, if you're not actually already in the class and still listening and thinking about perhaps joining us, we start on May 20th. That will be the first email that you get saying, let's get started. And then live classes will go from May 27th until July 22nd. That is 9 weeks, 90-minute classes each week. Holy cannoli. And May 6th is when early bird pricing ends, which I don't actually know when this episode drops, but probably around then. So would have been good to know that if that's relevant at all right now for you. If not, whatever. Hopefully you got the deal. But either way, also just hope that you join us. And if you're already in the class, let's freaking dive in. Today is chart synthesis, natal chart synthesis in particular. Maggie, what's the deal?
Well, this is the point of our course where we're really starting to apply all of the things that we have learned. So just a little recap, we've gone over the elements, the modes, what a chart looks like. We've gone over the angles, why they're important and how to find them, what they tell you about a person. We've talked about the planets, which are the what. We've talked about the signs, which are the how, and we've talked about the houses, which are the where. So that's all really great. If we spend time memorizing that, getting through that, and then not applying it, we can't really use any of that information or get any of those insights. So today's class is going to be all about applying. So we will look at, as always, we'll look at a couple charts. As a reminder, the chart is a snapshot of the sky at the moment of your birth, or the moment in time that you're examining. And this has like deep psychological implications. So looking at all of these details, applying them together, we're going to learn a lot about the chart that we're examining, the native, the person that it's connected to. Some of the ground rules here, we want to really stress that intuition is your greatest tool. We are not trying to get you to regurgitate information. We don't want like simple memorization. We want to help you understand how all of these things connect with each other. And the only way to do that is really to practice applying, practice looking at charts, practice, picking out all these details, and it's not going to happen overnight. So the intuition is going to be a really powerful tool in that whole process. Just another reminder, we can't tell you anything that you don't already know about yourself. It's just, I feel like that goes without saying. And then there is no right way or wrong way to look at a chart. So you can't find your right way unless you start trying to do it. So without further ado, let's start with the chart, shall we?
Can I add something real quick?
Yes.
Please? So in the we can't tell you anything you don't already know about yourself. I love that you said, like, I feel like goes without saying, except for I think that too often, and this is a big reason that astrology got a bad rap back in the day, and why there are still a lot of skeptics, is because there is often this fortune telling side of astrology, like the way that astrologers show up. It's like they're telling you these facts about yourself. And in fact, not all that long ago, a friend of mine sent me this like long voice note because a friend of hers had just completed an astrology course and is like launching his astrology practice, and, you know, needed to, in order to complete the course, had to do like 5 readings or whatever. And she was like, she and I are good friends. So she has heard from, she's listened to our podcast. Like she knows our philosophy, whatever. And she was like, oh my God, dude, this was like the worst reading. She's like, and he had to ask me for feedback. And she's very honest. And she was like, so I was very honest, but he was like super offended that I was not okay with the fact that he was just talking at me. He was telling me who I am. And there was no room for him. Like there was no room. And so I think, I mean, that was like literally, I don't know, just a couple of months ago. So the fact that there are still people at this point learning from, I don't know where, I don't know what school or whatever he was up to. I'm not saying that I think it's the norm. I just think that it still happens a lot. And that people just assume that when they read a horoscope or they read one of these astrology books you can buy, or they read a synthesis that AI gives them or something, that this is like, tell me about myself. Just tell me the thing, right? And even like right now, at the moment of this recording, we have 7 planets in Aries and everyone's like freaking out about it. And so yesterday I was actually at a lunch and my girlfriend was like, so what's going on with all these Aries planets? And I was like, I literally like rolled my eyes because I was like, oh my God, I can't. Like pop astrology just makes, it's like every moment there's something to be aware of. Now that's like true to a certain extent, right? But for example, me, super fiery Aries, like I was just telling you before we hit record, I could take a nap. Like all these days, I have just been like lots of fire energy in the air. Wonderful. I feel energized one moment, and I would also just like to take a nap. It does not mean that we're all like on the horse, like charging forward, right? It's also individualized. So, anyway, I don't mean to tangent, except for here we are, that it seems obvious, but I personally start every single reading I do with that line. There's nothing I can ever tell you that you don't already know about yourself at a soul level. We are maybe accessing some sort of remembering here. I'm reflecting back to you what this snapshot tells me about your soul's path, right? So Maggie said there's deep psychological information in the chart. Yeah, that's like when we say, oh, I know you've got to be a fast thinker because you've got your Mercury in Aries, da, 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 da. But then there's the evolutionary, blueprint side of it. You're looking at the psychology of a person, and you're also looking at what their soul came to evolve into in this life. So you can do, I'm not going to say countless, but you could do readings and synthesis and interpretation of charts with so many different through so many different lenses, if you will. And anyway, here we're obviously starting at the most fundamental and basic, but that's really on my heart, just to find your own language, find your own way of saying it. But as we always say, stay curious and enter this practice with tremendous humility for the fact that you don't fucking know. We don't know. And like, actually, at the end of the day, we don't know. What we do know, at least, is that we've done this for long enough now and we've had enough practice that it works. So whatever we're doing is working. So we're happy to share that. But like, we are not here to ever act as if we are any authority over any person or know any more than somebody does about their own selves. So anyway.
Mic drop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, carry on. So who are we going to be looking at today?
So we're going to start with Mr. Will Smith. Let me bring that up.
I love Will Smith. If you've listened to the pod, you already know how much I love Will Smith.
I'm making it whole sign.
Okie dokie. Let's see how easy it is to switch things from house systems.
It's gorgeous. Oh, look at this. Okay.
Oh, I love this man.
Here we go. So hopefully you've seen a couple charts by now.
What she means is obviously you've seen a lot of charts by now.
Obviously. So this is nothing new. We've got the wheel, we've got all of the signs around the perimeter, we've got all of the planets, all of the houses. This is familiar. We will start just like we've kind of built step by step by step as we've gone through this course. We are going to start with the sun, moon, and rising. That is an excellent place to start, whether you have 5 hours to look at a chart or you have 5 minutes to look at a chart. You can gain so much information about this person. So right out of the gate, I'm looking over at the left side of the chart for that AC, the rising sign. I see that it is 7 degrees of Gemini for Mr. Will. We also see just quickly that the sun is at 3 degrees of Libra. So right away, I see 2 air signs in the big 3. This tells me that all the stuff between the ears is probably going to be relevant to Will Smith, whether that is dialogue, talking to people, writing stuff. He's a big communicator. That's his whole job. All he does is get up and talk, like kind of pretending to be someone else. But that is, he couldn't act without this side of who he is. So intellect, I bet you he's a big thinker. I bet you he wants to talk as he processes his emotions, with the sun there, with rising there. And then also I'm going to get a little ahead and see that Mercury's there too. So that just confirms what I'm already thinking with all of this air energy right in the big 3. From there, we will go over to the moon. We'll look for this little crescent moon symbol. And I can see that it is in a water sign, not only like just any regular water sign, it's in Scorpio, which is a fixed water sign. So I'm thinking right out of the gate, he probably has immense emotional, not stability, but like inertia. That's what I'm going to say. When he feels something, I think that it gets like all the way down into his soul. I think he feels it deeply. And I think he probably holds on to it. So fixed emotional signs, a little bit when we have that stubborn energy, that persevering energy, that can also be like a person that really doesn't let go of a grudge. Someone stepped across his path the wrong way. He's probably going to remember it. He might even walk up on stage and smack him in front of the whole world. I don't know.
Good reference. Wait, was that hit? Who did he smack?
I think Chris Rock.
Chris Rock, right. I don't know why I was thinking Kevin Hart for a moment. Was he involved in that? I don't even remember what that whole thing was, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great point.
So right away, I mean, my gosh, I hardly said anything. And we already have a little bit of the sense of the flavor of Will Smith. How would you give me a little insight into your process, Meli?
Yeah. So same. I mean, this is like non-negotiable numero uno, like Maggie said, like if somebody, because this will happen. And as soon as you're like, oh, I know a little bit about astrology, or, if you choose to call yourself an astrologer or whatever, then people will want to know, well, tell me something. And this is certainly where you would start. So for me, I see that rising Gemini. And if you remember that verb that I've ascribed to rising, I like to think of this is how this person acts. So I think of those Geminian archetypes of the flirt and the charming communicator. And like, I haven't met Will Smith in person, but I mean, his big smile, his personality, and yeah, we get to see him obviously in acting a lot, but you watch interviews with him and stuff, like he's clearly a communicative, and I would think that flirtatious is probably actually in his real life way of being as well. And so that's, I kind of, okay, I get that flavor from him. And I know that that's how he presents most likely. And then I see that sun in Libra. And like Maggie said, I'm like, okay, double air. So for sure, this guy, like I could probably have a great conversation with this person. They're probably going to be inquisitive and good communicator, good conversationalist. And then I see that sun in the 5th house. And like Maggie said, got a little bit ahead peeking over at that Mercury there too, but always look, I don't know, I always look at Mercury also immediately. And I see that it's in the 5th house. And I'm like, okay, house of creativity, creative expression, childlike joy and play. And I think, okay, I would not be surprised if this person has a really bubbly, like fun personality. And Libra loves peace and harmony and wants to just like have things be balanced and light and feel good. And that all plays really nicely there. That makes me feel like, if I just think about how that energy makes me feel, I'm like, oh, this person probably feels pretty good to be around, like probably easeful to be in their space. And then Scorpio moon, I love the word inertia, but when you were searching for a word, I was just thinking depth, right? Really simple. Like whenever I think Scorpio, I'm always like, we go deep here. And also very private, right? Like not necessarily sharing. I think you said, I don't know what word you used, but I think you said something about that too. And I would think like, okay, so this person has the capacity to go pretty deep and likes kind of actually going beneath the surface, but it's not going to be like the first thing that they do. They're going to show you all that flirtatious, fun, harmonious or whatever stuff. And then they're going to kind of, once you really get to know them, you'll get to get more in that Scorpio. So yeah, that would be how I would start. And then from there, the other, what I would consider like non-negotiables are looking at the angles and then looking at the elements and modes, which really, when you look at the angles, that's already just giving you a really good modality breakdown. Looking at the elements are a little bit difficult, in my opinion, from a visual standpoint. Like you kind of got to look at it and be like, okay, I've got stuff in water here, and then I see air here, and I see. So you kind of have to do. For me, I sort of have to like sit back and do a little bit more of like a zoom out to do that. But that's why we'll look at the pie charts here in a moment. But let's just start with the angles real quick. So we have the ascendant and descendant in Gemini, and of course, right across from it, Sagittarius. So we know that that's mutable. And then you'll see that his MC/IC are in fixed because they're in MC is Aquarius and the IC is in Leo. So he's got a split modality situation in mutable and fixed. So that just immediately gives me an idea of, okay, so we've got some flexibility on the sort of like self and partnership aspect. And also, not to mention Libra, we could never get through all the things. We're trying to do a short synthesis here, but Libra loves love. And so I will automatically start doing this connection between like, okay, this person also probably like very important, partnership is very important to them. And looking at that Sag descendant in the seventh house is going to help me also get an idea of like what they search for in that partnership that's so important to them. So anyway, and then MC/IC is fixed. So, okay, now I know he's got his moon fixed, and then he's got two of his angles fixed as well. Interesting. So we just stay curious and keep an idea of what we're putting together energetically. And so then lastly, let's peek over to the infographic and see what the pie chart tells us about his element and his modality breakdown. Perfect. So we go here, and zodiac attributes show that his qualities, or they call it modalities or qualities here in Luna. And you've got cardinal at 41%, mutable at 35%, and then fixed at 23%. So heavy cardinal energy, pretty close on the mutable, and then least on fixed, though, as we know, with that moon there, it definitely still is going to be a large piece of him. And then over on elements, this one's pretty easy to see that water is his least at that 11%. And again, though, he's got his moon there, so that packs a little bit of a punch. And then otherwise, it's just Neptune. But on the other, those side there, we have air, and air is the highest. And then we've got fire is pretty close. And then earth is the least. So this would be, this is probably for being able to look at the elements and modes most quickly and actually get the breakdown. This is by far my preferred way, because visually it's a little bit tough to completely like to anchor that in. So yeah, that's what I would say are the non-negotiables. When you first open any chart, you got to look at these things. Did we miss anything, Maggie?
I don't think so. I think that was it.
Me neither. Okay, perfect. So that was Will. And now that was sort of like our explanation with breakdown. Now what we're going to do is just give ourselves 1 minute. Might not be generous enough. Should we do 2 minutes? 2 minutes each? Because I'm actually going to set a timer.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so we're going to do a timer for 2 minutes, and we're going to pull up Madonna's chart, because why not? And without any explanation, we're not attempting to teach you here what we're doing. We are simply going to, as if we're talking to Madonna, each of us are going to do a little, basically what we just did, breakdown on the most basic pieces of her chart. So Maggie, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. And start.
Okay, perfect. So my eyes naturally went straight to the angles this time. So, Madonna, my dear, we have mutable angles. We've got the midheaven Gemini, AC in Virgo, IC Sag, and DC in Pisces. So, to me, that looks right away like someone that is flexible, that rolls with the punches, that kind of adapts and adjusts. And do you remember when COVID happened and everyone was like, pivot? That's like, I think that you probably are a master pivoter. So I'm going to come up and look at, I just want to confirm and see that is the highest percentage. So I think that that rings true all the way through. In Will's chart we just looked at, some of that, like there were parts of him that were fixed. There were parts of him that are mutable. I think that this just, it's more across the board in this particular case. The next highest number of the modalities is fixed. So we see this a little bit confrontational part of who you are. Big part of you wants to go with the flow, roll with the punches, just kind of adapt and see what needs to be done and when. But there's this part of you that really wants to be a little bit sturdier with it, that wants to sustain, that wants to maintain, that wants to hold things in place as they are. So as you go about life, as you go about your days, I think being aware of this kind of split within you can help you can be aware, like, okay, I'm feeling this part of me wanting to hold firm. I'm feeling this part of me that wants to be a little bit loosey goosey. And then you choose, instead of having this like feeling of tension or feeling of conflict, you decide like, okay, well, I've been flying by the seat of my pants all week. So now I'm just going to decide that I'm going to be steady Eddie. I'm going to sustain, I'm going to maintain. So from there, we'll go and look.
Okay, that's it. That's your 2 minutes.
It's so okay.
I know. No, this is great. I love this because it's funny. We were talking about this yesterday, right? Where like Stephen Forrest won't do like hot seat stuff. Like he'll do in calls and stuff. Sometimes he will do like a more truncated reading kind of a thing, but for the most part he really tries to stay away from it because he's like, it's so hard because it's so complex. And then I find myself always being like, oh, there's so much more we can go, because you never want to just approach something from a silo and like, oh, I'm just going to tell you about this, because then you're leaving out so much. However, it is kind of a fun game to play. So that was awesome. And your strategy was different than mine. So I think that like, this is why we're doing that this way, because I love that you went to the angles, and the way you explained all of that, I think would be super resonant with Madonna. And let's see if the strategy that I go with, I look forward to seeing what you think. So, all right.
I feel like a game show.
Right. It is like a game show. I love a good game show. All right, my dear Madonna. I can't believe I'm sitting in the room with Madonna. It's very exciting. Okay, so when I look here, we're going to make sure you walk out of this room today. If you know nothing else, you will know your rising sun and moon signs, because these are super important for your understanding of like your overall energies of yourself. So starting with your rising sign, this is what I like to say is kind of how you act. So whether you like it or not, this is how you show up in the world. And your rising sign is over here on the left-hand side where it says AC. I see that that's in Virgo, but not only you can kind of see right next to it pretty easily, just visually, that ascendant is not by itself. You've also got your moon there. So now we've just checked off 2 of those big 3. You've got your rising and your moon are both Virgo. Then you've got 2 other placements in there without even going into what those are. You've got a stellium is what we call that in Virgo. You've got strong Virgo energy. So I'm pretty sure in the way that you typically show up in the world, let me guess, you probably like to get a job done right, and you might as well just do it yourself, because why bother trying to ask anybody else or have anybody help you, because you're just going to do it better anyway. You're probably going to do it more efficiently, and you're going to be proud of getting it done in the way that you wanted it to get done, and feel good that you know that you did it correctly, that you had control over the way that it was done, the details coming together the way that they're supposed to, etc. So this is a big Virgo archetype situation, is making sure is the control, is the wanting to do things right, and really being proud of having the job done correctly. So does that sound like you? Okay, great. And then I have 15 seconds left. So And then your son, I see your son over here in Leo. And I know immediately, speaking of proud, which was a word I was just using with Virgo, that actually comes in a little bit more with this Leo archetype. But I then know that you've got this fixed, proud, sort of lioness energy. And now that was my 2 minutes. But what did you think of that as a different sort of entry point?
I loved it. It was so, yeah,
Right.
perfect. No,
Yeah.
no.
So we don't need to limit ourselves this much. However, if you're in class with us, not as much limitation, and we'll be doing a lot more of this. This is just to give you an idea of how you can enter, right? And what I just did there, I think I've mentioned this on a pod episode at some point before, but the very first reading I ever had done, right, like the first sentence out of the astrologer's mouth was, do you know that you are unbelievably powerful and you can make anything you want happen? And like the way she said it, I was like, oh, tell me more about me and my powerful self. And she later, when I was apprenticing with her or whatever, I was like, hey, I'll never forget that. And like, tell me about your strategy when you enter a reading. And she said that every single chart that she looks at, she looks for something that she knows, like without a doubt, is going to connect with that person. And she starts off with a bang, just hooks them with something. And I was like, at that point, I was still very early in my learning. And I'm like, and how did you know that about me? And she was like, those are your 29-degree Aries conjunct Mercury. Like, are you kidding me? And I was like, okay, I love that for me. So the example that I just used with the I bet, I tend to use that quite a bit in my readings. I'll say, I bet you, because I'm not going to tell you that this is how you are, but dude, 4 planets in Virgo and 3 personal, there's no way that this person is probably asking for help. That's just probably not the case. And that's like a classic Virgo thing is I'm just going to do it myself. Thanks. I'll just do it. I'll take care of it. I'll shoulder the thing because I'm just going to do it. I'll get it done right. So, okay. That was fun. I enjoyed
That was fun. I think that it's probably evident, but like I said before, there is no one right way. Like as you continue to look at charts, different things, your eyes will probably go to different things each time. Like if there's some crazy configuration here with the rising sign, that's a lot different than if there's no planets in the first house, you might be drawn to something else. So I think that being curious about where your eyes naturally go, that helps you strengthen your intuition and that kind of internal guidance to synthesize all this information.
And this is a perfect segue because basically what we just went through was step 1. So this is the practice that you want to start doing with every single chart you look at. You're going to do your rising sun, moon, you're going to do your angles, and you're going to do your modes and elements, and you're just going to start talking. You're just going to say this shit out loud. You're going to stumble over words. You're going to not be sure if what you're saying makes sense. You're going to be like, oh my God, am I making shit up right now? And then you're going to like also remember how powerful your intuition is, and that you make sure that that feels online and you feel connected to that. For me, I literally do. This is like the most, I guess, somatic experience that I have, or psychosomatic or whatever, in this space, is that I do get goosebumps when I'm in, I suppose, what some people might call like, I don't know, not a channel state. Like I don't start speaking in some other tongue or whatever, but like when I'm saying something that I just know is true because of what I'm seeing, it's so often not something that I wrote in the notes, or right, because when you're practicing like we are, if this is what you want to do and you want to go do readings for people, then you got to create some sort of process. You're going to take your notes and you're going to refer to those as you're talking to the person, and there's going to be a flow that you follow, and everybody builds that the way that they build it. And at some point, I'm sure Maggie and I will share that. But for those of you who are doing this for your family members or for your, friends, or just for fun, then maybe you're not even taking notes. Maybe you're just looking at the chart and you're just speaking from your heart. That's what I did for like 2 years. I never took one note. I just like had a book that would help me remember things. And then I would be like, I think, and then I would just stare at it. And that's actually something to mention. Like what I've started doing over the last few months that has been really helpful is I stare at it for like 5 minutes, the chart, any chart. And especially what I do is the night before I know I have a reading, I look at my calendar for the next day. If I have a reading for the next day or multiple, whatever, I spend a few minutes looking at each chart, and then I just sleep on it. I just like close it, go to sleep. And then the next day I see sort of I look at it again and I kind of just see what comes up because I kind of let my subconscious go to work. And I don't know if I've ever shared this story here before, but I remember, so my late father-in-law was an architect, a brilliant architect, an incredible artist, and just also really like really efficient too. He was just an amazing like mix of things. And my husband has his master's in applied math, and then he also works with me in my astrology business and our astrology business, our photography business. And so when people hear that, they're like math and art, and I'm like, I mean, got really good mix of the left and right brain. I think that an architect is literally an artist and mathematician, so it's pretty interesting. So anyway, lived with both of them for 4 years, 5 years actually. After we first got married, we lived with him, he lived with us, whatever, and my father-in-law. And we did a bunch of renovations to our old house, and we had all these grandiose ideas of what we wanted to do, but there was only so much that we were practically going to do. So every once in a while, like not every once in a while, all the time, something was under construction. And this was new for me. Like I grew up in apartment buildings and like it was what it was, like the end. And so I would watch them work. And finally, after a long, like the first, I don't know, a couple months of that and watching their process, I was like, hey, I've just like been observing you guys and I just want to understand your process a little bit better because I feel like I walk in the room half the time and the two of you are just like this, like just sitting and staring. And they were both like looking at me like, yeah, why is that weird? And I was like, because I'm such a doer, right? So like if you're not moving and doing and drawing and hammering and like then things aren't happening. But I learned so much from watching their process and hearing them talk about it. Now, of course, Matt modeled a lot of his process after his dad, but to see them working together would literally be so cute. Like I'd walk in and they're both sitting there. They both have like a pencil behind their ear and they both just like are in the like thinking man pose for like a long time. And then all of a sudden it would be time to put pencil to paper, get the ruler out, do the thing. And the precision that came with then that part of the process was very different than the creative thinking process. And I think of that fondly when I'm doing what I do now and as I hone my process, because it's ever changing. And I think like this is my version of that. I'm letting the creative process sink in. I'm letting observation play. I'm letting my intuition and my subconscious have a really big role in this because this is not just one. We really can't overstate it. This isn't just one way of doing this. You will find your way. But I don't know. Yeah, just sharing part of my process because I think that that's valuable as an option to hear, right? That there's so many just different ways to do it. So
Yeah.
okay. Tangent number 3. So now though, what Maggie was saying was, where does your eye go? Like follow where your eye goes. So after you've done this little 5-minute thing that we just did, if that's all you have with somebody and you're looking at the super basics, now we're going to really get into synthesizing a full chart. So let's say that Madonna she hired us for a reading and she's like, hey, okay, our reading with Madonna's tomorrow at 2 p.m. We got to start getting our notes together. What's going on? So I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to sleep on it. And then I'm just going to stare at it. And I already know the things I know. I already know she's a Virgo rising and a Virgo moon. I know she's a Leo sun. Let's just say I don't know jack shit about Madonna otherwise. I don't know that she's a rock star. I don't know anything of her history at all. And I'm just building, who is this person and what is this soul here to experience? From a psychological standpoint, who is this person? So when I look at the moon and the rising and the sun and the Mercury and the Venus, I start to think, how might this present in a human being? How might this human being walk this earth? How would I expect them to behave? But then I'm also thinking on a deeper level, but okay, based on the what, the how, the where, that all of this represents and all of these placements represent, what did her soul come to learn in this lifetime? What path did she come here to walk? So this is deep stuff. This isn't just like super simple, right? But the psychological stuff helps you connect with the human who's sitting in front of you. And the evolutionary stuff helps you to connect with their soul. That stuff that they know that they may not know that they know. So with all that being said, I'll say that my eye and there's kind of like, I think these core things we can safely say everybody's going to notice first and foremost. If you see a cluster of planets in one place, your eye just goes there. So of course we see this Virgo stellium. Can you zoom in a little bit? Yeah. So I'm like, all right, great. We've got 4 planets in Virgo. And then I want to look at those degrees, of course. And I see, okay, so we've got the ascendant and the moon are conjunct just by a 3-degree orb. And then same on the other side for Mercury. So those are all conjunct right there. Not going to give, I mean, Pluto is there. It's definitely a part of the cluster. I would say not as strong as where how the personal planets are, but it is still there. So we'll give, if we had to sort of layer it, that's going to be like maybe the cherry on top is how I might look at that. But I also noticed that Mercury is retrograde, right? We see that red, the 5 is in red, and then the RX on the side. So that's just something to note, right? Okay, so somebody with Mercury retrograde, or just generally when a planet is retrograde in a natal chart, there's a little bit more of an internal feeling there. Okay, interesting. So I would consider this, there's probably like a good level of introspection in the way that this person thinks. And I'm trying to pretend I don't know Madonna is a rock star. But her process and how she like writes her lyrics, or like in creating sort of the way that she communicates, I bet there's a bit more of an internal process. She also may like really, the types of people who like rethink a lot what they've said, rethink a lot what they have written and done, and the way that it might have fallen on people, especially with Virgo, a lot of judgment and like consideration of opinions and whatnot. I bet there was quite a bit of that for her. So anyway, I would really sit here with this Virgo stellium for a while and just think about like, oh, how might this impact somebody? We're looking at that. What in the moon is the emotions and the Mercury is the mind. So I would just start to put those things together and say like, wow, okay, that's a lot of energy that with that Virgo flavor, right? And then I always check myself too when I'm doing this, because like I've talked about the words I've used so far. I've talked about judgment and discernment and perfectionism. Basically, I've gone through kind of like these high level keywords, but then remember that Virgo is the sign of service. Virgo loves to be in service. So I often then think to myself, what am I forgetting? What am I not ignoring? Because it's never like intentional. It's just sometimes we get accustomed to the things we think of first, the things we hear the most, and we forget to kind of bring it all in. And so, this is going to be like, I bet, and I've honestly never listened to an interview or anything with Madonna, but if I had to guess, I bet that she feels very strongly that what she created and brought into this world was in service of the good of all. And like, let's for a moment now pretend that we know who Madonna is. And, the way that she showed the fuck up as her own self and like never, I mean, I'm sure she did waver at some point. I don't really know. I didn't actually follow her like all that much, but like we know she did some crazy shit. We know that she like was shocking. And I don't, does she, what's her Aquarius? Does she have anything in Aquarius?
Heaven? No.
No, that was Will. She got Chiron in Aquarius in the 6th. Interesting. She's got Uranus in Leo though, same as the sun. So that's that. I would say that brings some of that definitely like Uranian flavor into her essence. But anyway, so I would bop around from here, Virgo, and then other than looking at the stellium or a cluster of planets, there's 2 ways to kind of go from here. One is that 2, I would say conjunctions, which, let's like scroll down to the bottom there in the 2nd house. I see that it's a smaller cluster of planets, but we do have North Node conjunct Jupiter. Okay, something good to know. So I'm going to look for as many conjunctions as I can find. We do want to like generally look at as many aspects as make sense to look at, but from the perspective of an astrologer, I do 75 to 90-minute readings. There is such a thing as fatigue. Like, I don't want somebody to get too overwhelmed with information. I want them to actually be able to walk away like they've really learned something and feel seen and heard and understood. And there's always time for other readings. So you don't want to go too crazy either. So it does not exist a scenario where you can get through all the aspects, all the planets. It's not going to happen. But that's why this strategy of looking first for the clusters or the stelliums, specifically looking for conjunctions, because those are going to speak very strongly. Like yesterday, I was looking at a chart for somebody that was Venus exactly conjunct the sun. It's going to tell me a lot about the way that this person flows through life. critical degrees, which we haven't addressed in this class specifically, but we will have linked you, or, you know, in the course, we will link you to our critical degrees episode too. Definitely worth a listen, definitely worth memorizing those as well. The 29 degrees, the 0 degrees, and then in each of the modes, there are specific degrees that it's worth being like, okay, well, if that's a critical degree and they have that, then we know that that planet plays a slightly larger role for them. And then this is like the strategy that makes the most sense for how you're able to synthesize a chart in a reasonable amount of time and give people sort of a reasonable amount of information. So then you can focus on those things. The next thing I want to say that to me is a non-negotiable, and I think honestly to most astrologers, even if they don't call themselves an evolutionary astrologer, but you should be looking at the nodes no matter what. So we're looking at the South Node and the North Node. Where are they? What sign? What house? Let's do a quick synthesis of that. We've got a South Node here in Aries. We've got a North Node in Libra. So I know past life karma stuff is bringing in this familiar energy for Madonna around this warrior spirit. She's fucking fierce. And so there can be more of this almost like dictator, because right, South Node, karmic past we don't want to repeat. So we're going to look at sort of that shadow side a little bit more. Shadow side of Aries, we're looking at a little bit too direct, a little bit too aggressive. The actual like warrior, not in the like, look at you trudging through life and fucking making shit happen, but like the one that kills a bunch of people, like that side of things. If you were to do a class with Stephen Forrest, like he likes to tell a fake story basically that he puts together with the nodes. And like in this case, I could see him talking about, with it being in the 8th house, so this is like deep kind of shit, like talking about you literally like killing people and having been like a warrior in that way. And it's like, okay, you're not here to do that same kind of work this time. You're here to move toward that North Node, that Libran energy over in that 2nd house. So you're here to focus this time on partnership and love and harmony and the way that you value those partnerships. And so this is extremely quick, obviously, but you do always want to look at the nodes. Let's just say that for some reason you don't get through all the planets because, and again, from the lens of an astrologer, at minimum, you do want to make sure that you do bring a little bit of that in. Another reason being is because there's so much expansion available when we start looking at the nodes, because we really look at that evolutionary path at a deeper level. And so it opens up curiosity. It opens up more doors for people wanting to learn more about themselves in the chart. So I always bring the nodes in for sure. And then the last thing I'll say is that the then kind of last strategy, and like obviously most comprehensive strategy, and Maggie and I did a lot of prep for this, talking about like, how did we get to our current system of how we do things, and like, how did we get there? And I think it's probably true of every single astrologer that we literally used to spend 3 to 4 hours easy on a chart before we even opened our mouths to a client. Definitely when I first started like actually charging and doing this, like I remember looking at Matt one day and being like, I have got to get more efficient at this because this is not worth the dollars at the moment. Like, holy crap. But honestly, it evolved fairly quickly for me because I was so consistent and so like on top of it. And all of a sudden, again, leaning on that intuition too, it just clicked. And I was like, oh, I get it now. I get how the chart is speaking to me and I get how I engage with it. This is a collaborative effort. And also, it is a collaborative effort in the way that I practice with my client. I do not purport to know everything about you. I want to hear from you how that Jupiter feels. I want to hear, how does it feel to you to have this really Virgoan archetype, but then you also have this really strong Leo? Those two don't really play, like they don't really understand each other. Let's talk about that a bit. That's part of how we practice, and it's not a part of how everybody practices. So all of that to finish saying that writing out every single planet and every single planet's placement and every single house and writing a synthesis out of that is recommended, because doing that enough times shows you where you can shortcut efficiently and which pieces of that you don't really need. But it also allows you to keep practicing the skills of all of this knowledge, the symbols, the keywords, etc. So like old me, 3 years ago me, whatever, would have sat down and in order written ascendant, Virgo, 8 degrees, conjunct moon, and I would have gone through every single one. And then under that, I would have written, okay, so Virgo moon would mean that emotional. And then I would think of a story. If a Virgo moon was in an argument with their spouse, how would they show up? And like, that's because I think in story, right? So, anyhow, I've been talking for like 97 minutes. So I'm going to stop now. But that, I really, really want this to come across as a very clear step by step model of how to go through this. And again, it will be in the workbook in that way too. But we've got those ground rules of the non-negotiables of the rising sun, moon, element, mode, angle. And now here you do get some flexibility. But the first things first is, where does your eye go? And you're looking for stelliums and conjunctions and things that your eyes naturally look at, like our eyes easily see a 0 or 29 degree without even trying anymore. Those are really important for the criticals. And then the nodes. Got to give a shout out to those and make sure that they make them into the synthesis as well. So Maggie, what do you got?
So I am the same way. That's how I started. When I first started looking at charts more seriously, I would figure out what the elemental composition were. So just get a sense of how many planets are in water signs, how many are, just like we've been saying. You look at the elements, you look at the modes, you look at the angles, and then I would literally go through, just like Meli said, and say, okay, sun's at 23 degrees Leo. It's in the 12th house. It has a conjunction with Pluto and a sextile to the North Node and to Jupiter for every single planet, whether I was going to talk about it in the reading or not. Because what I feel like we do when that is the approach that we take is, I feel like we're laying bricks. We're putting, it's like very intentional. You're putting the mortar, whatever, the goopy stuff that holds it all together, you're putting it on and stacking one at a time. Yes, it's tedious, but guess what? You have a wall when you're done, and you get to choose, I'm gonna, this is relevant to the conversation. And you then have this whole arsenal of things to pull from, to ask them questions about. And you get to pick what is chosen. And from there, it reminds me of when I first started teaching yoga. I started teaching yoga like 12 years ago, which is crazy. And when I first graduated from teacher training and I had a 6 a.m. class on Friday mornings, I wrote out every single posture, every single quote. I would even put in soundtrack changes. Like, we need to make sure the song's playing at this time. And while that was great, it made me feel prepared. It gave me something to fall back on. That is not where it comes from my heart anymore. I laid those bricks. I got that feeling of stability and confidence, and that I know that I can look at the chart, I can look at a room of yoga students, and I can speak to exactly the thing, whether or not it's written down. And so that is a little bit of a transition point, but it's harder to get there if you don't lay the bricks in the first place. So don't be put off by how long it takes. Just, I guess, trust the process is what I want to say. Put in the time, you'll get that ground laid, and then you'll be able to dance on it. So
I love that. The bricklaying is a great metaphor. Is that a metaphor? I'm so bad at what those things are called. Analogy. Like a metaphor or a friggin' not an anomaly, an analogy. Oh God. Oh God. I could not agree more. And I something you said there, I think, again, for practice in the astrology room as an astrologer, if that's what you want to do, having access to more things to talk about than time allows is way better than not. There's nothing worse than having a 75-minute reading and being at minute 50 and being like, oh shit, I have 2 things left to talk about. And am I going to be able to stretch those? Doesn't happen often for me, as you might imagine. I've got plenty to say, but it's still, you want to have more. And again, I'm a relationship builder. I ideally want to work long-term with people. I want to be able to keep going deeper and to support in different chapters of life, etc. So the better I know you, the more we can get into it all, the better. So I think that even if you're not doing it, like even in the example of like your kids or your spouse or whatever, you probably want to know them pretty darn good too. So yeah, cool. All right. Well, you took Madonna down, but do we want to do the same process now with Will? Let's do this second look without so much of the explanation, more so again now. Will booked us for a reading. Fucking sick. Oh my God. I would just be like, can we please laugh the entire time? That's all I want to do. So, Maggie, why don't you go first?
Hmm.
I'm not timing us this time. I think that'd be cruel. No game show this time. Just go for it.
Okay, so naturally, immediately upon looking at this chart, my eye goes to this quadrant here with all of these planets. We see Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, Uranus, Sun. So this tells me, Will, forgot what I was doing. This tells me, Mr. Will, that this sector of your life arena has a lot of weight in it. This is your home, the roots of your existence, your foundation. It's your creative expression that comes out like when you're having fun and when you're playing. That's a big part here. And then finally, the day-to-day, just the work, the mundane, all of the minute details that kind of make up your overall physical reality. So I think these arenas probably are at the forefront a lot of the time in your life. With Sun here in Libra at 3 degrees, opposing Chiron in Aries, I love looking at the Sun to see what relationships it has with the other planets. We've already talked about your personality being in an easy relationship with your rising and how you express yourself. So I think there's a coherence between personality and then like outer self-expression, how you show up, how people feel when they are around you. Where that might be easy, I think that there can be a point of tension between your personality and this wound that you have, that you carry around on the inside. Often this wound is something that you are very keen at helping other people with. This is something it's not totally unfamiliar to you. You've maybe suffered with it, and therefore you know how to help others. But for some reason, that same know-how might escape you when it comes to helping yourself. It might just be difficult. This is like, it's hard to do it when you're in it, it's just harder to see clearly, I guess, when you're in the throes of the thing. And I think the thing for you is connected to yourself, your personal identity, who you are. I think it's probably easier for you with all these planets over here in Libra, all this weight in this area of your chart. I think it's probably easier for you to be cognizant of others and aware of others. If someone you care about is upset, I think that could like rub your ego. Your ego might not be okay until you can fix their problem for them, where it's just like a hyper awareness almost of other people. So I think it's important, this oppositional energy here between Chiron and the Sun. I think it's important just with where it is in your chart. Kind of an avenue to address this would be to focus on the hobbies and enjoyment and entertainment that you generate yourself. Like, what do you enjoy? How do you like to play? And practice flexing those muscles when you really have a stronger ability to do that. I think it's easier to be a little bit lighthearted about the other people and maybe not feel so responsible for their things.
Awesome. Should I piggyback off of that? And then we can, like, maybe we'll just ping pong a little bit, because that's so deeply related to the South Node and North Node too. It's a perfect piggyback, because the South Node in Libra, that has this potential, kind of similar, honestly, to, I feel like, how I see a Libra moon present too, is this tendency to people please, like just too much, and to be so concerned with everybody's everything, that you can end up being sort of like a doormat. And the other part of what Maggie was saying with that Chiron and Aries, that I would say, like, moving toward this with the North Node, is that there's also this like this insecurity of self. There is this like, if you have to stand up and be brave and do the courageous thing, that probably feels scary and not easy. Like you've been burned there before. So I'm like not gonna do that. And so first of all, that's the Chiron, that's like the wounded healer energy at that 0 degree, which we did mention is a critical degree. So that's just a really like, it almost makes it feel more raw, is the way that I think of it. And then with the North Node there, the North Node is showing us what you're moving toward. Yes. So it's an unfamiliar. So now we're asking you to be brave and courageous and stand up for yourself and like do the me thing. And your Sun and South Node and Libra are like, could we just like take care of our wife and kids and business? But let's just do everything else out here. We don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. Everything's fine. While like it's like that meme, right? Like everything's fine. And like the dinosaur is like sitting in a fire and it's like everything is not fine. On top of that, in Libra too, you've also, excuse me, in Aries also up there, you've got Saturn. So you got some, we don't like to use right, wrong, bad, good, hard, easy, but if we're looking at a little bit more challenging placements, all right, well, Saturn, North Node, and Chiron all in the same house, opposing all of that heavyweight energy that Maggie was mentioning. Damn, you got something to learn in that Aryan space. So we see those, we know Saturn is lessons and discipline. And we've already now spoken about Chiron and North Node enough. So in the synthesis here, we see that. And we think of all the Aries keywords, some that I've already mentioned, the bravery, the courage, the, some of the confidence, the fieriness, the leadership, whatever. Start to really think about all of those and think about somebody who has lessons to learn around that, who's charting an untraveled path and feels wounded in those areas, and start to realize like, oh, like how might that feel for that person? How might that feel for that person? I think a lot of what we've said so far is primarily psychological. And then on that evolutionary path, it's like, oh, they're meant to come home to themselves. They're meant to go self first. That's the lesson that their soul said, could we figure that out this time? Like, we're still going to love others. We're still going to have amazing partnerships. We're still going to do all this wonderful creative stuff in the world, etc. But ultimately, can we learn some lessons for ourselves? And can we come home to ourselves? I think huge lesson for Will. And as you guys will know, I'm obsessed with his autobiography, which I will have to listen to again because I loved it that much. And I can't remember the exact story right now, but reflecting on this right now, there is this whole story about this crazy big lavish like party that he threw for Jada for like her 40th or something, that she was like mad about. She was like, there was no part of me that wanted any of that. You did that shit because you thought that that's like what I wanted or whatever it was. Like it was this whole thing. And he was like floored. He's like, what? I just did like the nicest thing for you. How am I like in trouble now? But it's what you're talking about here is that it was like so much on other, and not really actually being, I mean, there's multiple things going on here. Obviously, her love language is clearly different than his and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, if, I don't know, I guess you could ask the question, like, had he been more like solid in himself and clear on like focused on navigating life as his best self, and not so outwardly focused, how that maybe would have been different. But anyway, yeah, that I would say you can't not look at that quadrant down there. That quadrant is like Maggie said, it's house and home and all that stuff. But will you go to the infographic real quick and scroll all the way to the bottom? I always forget how it's defined here, but it's a nice little reminder of the definition of the quadrants. The bottom right is the second quadrant. Inner empowerment and rootedness. Inner empowerment and rootedness. So then even just taking those words and what we're talking about here, like the Libra energy comes in because Libra's down there, but like what we were just talking about, all that Aryan stuff is inner empowerment. So, but it's how you go about it. And he goes about it in this Virgoan way with that Virgo in the fourth house. So there's this tremendous discernment. There's probably a real judgment of self that he's not doing it right that his home could always be better, that he could be doing better for his family, that he's not doing enough. Virgo tends to put us in that place, right?
Definitely.
Of course, with anything, there's a million different ways to look at it, but I wanted to look and see, since we have such a preponderance there, to see what those words were, because that's a really easy way to look and go, okay, let's just reflect on those words real quick and see how that plays out and how this archetype, this person might show up. What I'll notice also when I'm going through is everything that we just did got us through like a good chunk of stuff, but what we didn't do yet, which we would have time to, for example, in a reading, or if somebody was really curious, would be to make sure we at least specifically touch upon the personal planets. So looking at, and I would just do this in order, I would look at Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And here we've got Mercury conjunct Venus in Libra at those later degrees, with the Venus at that 29 degree. And Will Smith is nice to look at if you ask, I feel like most people. This is Venusian thing. And that's kind of like I don't know, I'm not going to call it superficial, but whenever we have Venus like in the same house as the sun, or conjunct the rising, or whatever, like near, there's just like this ease that comes with this person. Usually there's an aesthetic thing, like they really care about how they look, or they are easy on the eyes, if you will. I don't know. To me, all those things are true about him. And he speaks with a tremendous amount of ease, and there's a lot of flow to the way that he presents. I mean, for God's sake, he was a rapper too. So all the things.
Very pleasant voice.
Yes, absolutely. So nice to listen to. And then Mars, and at absolute minimum, then Jupiter and Saturn as the transpersonals. If I got to the end of a reading and didn't get to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, especially if they're not conjunct something, like conjunct a personal planet, or really like obviously strong in the chart, then very easily I'll get through a reading and not mention those. But the personal planets, I will, even if I only spend a few minutes and go, hey, we've got a little bit of time left. Let's just make sure, like, your Mars in Virgo, your Venus in, Libra, tell me these things. And I like to break it down like we have been here, with a little bit of an order that helps people actually walk away remembering. So I'll say something like, all right, so Mars is the god of war. And we all know Mars is like the masculine side of us too. So we think of like all that powerful, action-oriented motivation, frustration, anger, like all these sides of that. And so you've got Mars and Virgo in the 4th house. So that just tells me I'm going to bring this again. I've got my what. I just defined the what. I'm not telling the client or my spouse or whatever. I'm probably not explaining to them, well, this is the what. So now I'm telling you that because we're going through how you'll do the synthesis. But so that's Mars. Now, how does it act? It acts in this Virgoan way. At this point, we've already talked about Virgo a bunch. So it's like all that Virgoan stuff, this judgment and this precision and this really caring about doing things right. And so when you take action, you probably like to make sure it's being done in an orderly way, that it's being done in an efficient way, that it's being done correctly. And you probably like to make sure that like the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted just so. And, maybe sometimes a little bit too much. Maybe you could loosen up a little bit, because not everything has to be perfect, right? Progress over perfection. And then in the 4th house, this shows me that fierceness and that drive really comes into play probably quite a bit when it comes to your family and in your home. If there's a home project that has to be done, or there's something that has to do with your family, you're probably right on top of that. That's the place where this really shines for you. And again, having listened to his book, I will say that one thing that I just remembered that stood out to me was there was this point in time where he and what's his son's name? The daughter's Willow.
Jaden Smith?
Yep. I don't remember the specifics again, but it was either that both of them were filming a movie at the same time that was in it was like the Karate Kid or whatever, but I don't know if it was that Will was filming a movie at the same time. There was some sort of crossover, which I'm maybe saying this wrong. There's either like a stepson or something. There's somebody else, there's some other kid or whatever that had these like football games in the US while they were filming this stuff over in Hong Kong or wherever it was. And for that entire filming season and football season or whatever it was, Will and Jaden flew back and forth. Like it was some ridiculous schedule where it was like to make sure that they didn't miss one of these games for whoever it was or whatever. They flew like on a Friday night to make it home just in time for the game or whatever, and then turn right back around and fly back to make it back for filming.
Wow.
That's some like Mars in the fourth house fucking precision Virgo shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, and as motivated as he is to, preserve, protect whatever that part of his life, show up in that part of his life too, we can extrapolate that to this can be a huge point of frustration in his life as well, where you see that passion of Mars, where you see the motivation. Think about it. That all sits on the same spectrum. If something prevents you from tending to that area, if something prevents you from pouring in, like that can be that would be a way to probably get smacked in the face.
yeah, the smack in the face shows up again.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I'm feeling like wrapping this one up on one of two things. I would love to hear, Maggie, whichever one you feel more called to speak to, because I just love hearing your synthesis of things too. The Mercury Venus conjunction and or the Moon Neptune conjunction.
Oh, wow. That's okay.
Wow.
I don't know why I'm so weird.
I love it.
I will do Mercury, Venus in the fifth house. And we've got, as Meli has mentioned, Venus at 29 degrees. We know right away that stands out a lot. That is a person who has put in all the other degrees over maybe previous lifetimes, whatever. This is like fully saturated Venus in Libra. With Mercury conjunct his mental operations, intellect, all of that kind of mental stuff. I think that Libran things, I think is probably in the front of his mind quite a bit, and also fifth house things. I think that he. I feel like I said this already, so I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but just that awareness of other people. I think that with that activating in his fifth house, the entertainment, the games, the hobbies, the joy, the like childlike expression of self. I think that as long as he isn't, I think he'll let himself do those things as long as he isn't stepping on someone else's toes or rubbing someone the wrong way or like creating a ripple or ruffling feathers. I think that he probably has a lot of parameters in place with what he'll allow himself to enjoy or even think about, like entertain in his mind. It's always like measured up to like, and how is this going to affect X, Y, and Z? This isn't going to cause me problems with my relationships, right? This isn't going to hurt my people. Although, like, I don't know, maybe I don't know if he's been like well, it's none of my business if he's had affairs or anything. Just that kind of aware, like that would obviously probably hurt his wife's feelings if they have a traditional relationship that has boundaries. But neither here nor there. I think that fifth area of life takes up a lot of his mental space, and with the parameters to make sure that we're not going beyond the boundaries and ruffling other people.
Yeah. I think also what you're speaking to, it's funny, like chunks of the book are coming back to me, like while we're talking. And one of them, two things that came to mind. One is that we grow into our chart, right? Like we're not like we came with this, but it's not like we just display all of these things all of the time. And if the first through third house are like the beginning of life, it's like then he's got this packed second quadrant that it's like he went through a lot of growth in a short amount of time, is what kind of like how I would look at this and think like, oh, that probably got a little backlogged. He probably had like a lot that he was, and if you look at even just like his success and how his career grew, I mean, are you kidding me? Fresh Prince of Bel-Air just freaking went crazy. And then all of a sudden he was in like a billion movies and, doing all of that whilst then also having this relationship and building a family in the background. And I know that there's been a lot of contention. I don't keep up with celebrity stuff either, but just from the book, I know that he and Jada, I don't think that either would use the word traditional at all for their relationship, but I think that there's a deep respect that they both had for each other and have had for each other that has been tested many, many times. And so when you were talking about that, I'm like, well, yeah, except for I think this is where this Aries Libra split that we're seeing and these big lessons he has to learn in like the Aries side of things is almost like there is this overgiving, this overdoing, this too much on the Libra side that did ultimately end up, while he probably thought he was doing good by others, he wasn't. He was like, it's almost like if we live by this idea that if we know thyself, fully understand, each of us puts our focus on me and try to be the best me I can be without really actually worrying all that much about out there, which is way easier said than done. Obviously, I understand that. But if we all do that, then everything flows that much better, because what is actually better for me is going to be ultimately best for the collective. And if that's true for everybody, then we're all like vibing in this coherence that's way more organic, I think, than if we're too concerned with out there. And what it does seem like is that he was always concerned with the wife or the kids and doing things right for them. But it's like, hold up, if let them focus on them, you focus on you, right? And Maggie and I decided that we weren't going to get into this aspect, though it is mentioned in some of our episodes. I'm just going to briefly mention it because he does have a yod, which is called a finger of God, which is a fated point, which is like a whole fucking thing. And might as well just like pinpoint it real quick. You've got he's actually got two. Wait, did I miss the second? Go back out. I wasn't even looking at that one. Isn't Saturn the apex of a yod too? Oh,
Yeah.
geez. Okay.
Oh,
but hold on. So this is the one that I was looking at. So this is, since we're here at the moment, we're going to leave it there for just a sec. So you can see that you've got these two in conjunctions, which those we did talk about, the quincunx. We've got those two going from Neptune and the moon up to Saturn. And then you've got Pluto up to Saturn. So that's the one that I was looking at. And then at the base of that, you're not seeing the sextile line at the moment, but there is a sextile between Pluto and the Neptune moon conjunction. That's the base of the yod. And then those two in conjunctions are literally the finger of God, is what it's called, pointing to this fated Saturn point, which means like this is a really, really important part of this person's trajectory. Like soul absolutely came to like learn this shit. And if you remember that the in conjunction is trial and error, a lot of trial and error energy to get there. We would look at the Pluto and Neptune moon conjunction as the gifts that are in tandem working to sort of support the process of it moving up to that Saturn. Now go back to the Chiron real quick. What's the base on that one? So the base on this one, yeah, that's legit too. All right. Damn. So as if the Aries stuff wasn't already important, because it's there and we got to look at all the things anyway. But in this one, you see the same configuration of those two in conjunctions, but at the base, you've got Mars at that 2 degree there in Virgo, and then you've got the Mercury Venus conjunction. So that's the sextile that's at the base of that one. So we're not going to do a full synthesis of that, but that could be a fun practice. Maybe we'll actually do that in live class. I don't know. We'll have to decide to go a little bit deeper in that. But back out of that real quick. The reason I was just mentioning that was because actually I think I was just mentioning it because I wanted to, because, oh, I know why. Because that Saturn, since I was specifically looking at the Saturn one, but this is relevant to the Chiron too, is everything we've said about that up until this point, like just 2x it. Basically, it makes it all that much more important. These yods pointing there are telling us, alert, William, like you fucking came to fix this shit. And it's like, how easy you could imagine would it be for this human in this body, this soul in this body, to focus their energies on all this Libran, Virgoan, Scorpio and shit, because all their energy's down there, and kind of be like, yo, I see you, Aries. I like hear you, but like, nah, I'm good. But like, actually, you gotta do that. Okay. And so it'll be fun having looked at this and like listening to his book again. And maybe I'll like go listen to some more interviews by him and stuff. Cause I recently actually popped up, probably because we were talking about it, like popped up in my feed or something. Like he and Jada are going through some shit now. Like they fucking are always going through something.
It's better business that way, if there's some
better
stuff.
that they be fighting. Yeah, for sure. But the second thing that I remembered from the book while you were talking, which was very Scorpio moon, is he said that when he and Jada, I don't even think it was only when they first started dating, but he was saying something about like his favorite part of their relationship was that they will stay up for hours upon hours and just talk about like all the deep philosophical things in life and all the like anything and everything. And like they didn't, they're not staying up to watch movies and TV and whatever. Like they were right. The moon speaks to our happiness, and that Scorpio, that depth. Like this is not somebody who cares for surface level, even if his Gemini does bring us some of that in, and he wants to kind of again just say the story that's going to make everyone laugh and whatever. But at the deepest part of him, he's up at 2:30 in the morning with his wife, laughing and crying, and like I love that. Makes me so happy.
I love that too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was fun. God, Will Smith, will I meet you before this life is over? That's the question.
I hope he hears this episode.
I know, me too. I'm gonna like tag you,
Yeah.
pictures of you. Well, a picture of him right here.
We'll do a reading for you, Will. Just get in touch. Okay.
Yeah, just get in touch, Will. What are you doing? What are you doing? All right. So that, friends, was natal synthesis. So if you are not in class with us, go find a chart, do these things. Let us know how it went. Let us know what questions came up. If you are in class with us, let's go deeper. We're going to go deeper. You will be bringing your own charts to class to be synthesizing. We'll be like hot seat for you, hot seat for us on Q&As, which is going to make the practice so much deeper and more interesting and more applicable, more usable, right? And I guess that's like the same fucking word. Anyway, our last class is our next class, which is a bi-wheel synthesis. So we actually like weren't sure if we wanted to include bi-wheel synthesis at all, because I would say that's astrology 201 big time. Like took me a long time to look at a bi-wheel and not be like, what am I looking at? But we believe in your brain cells and in the capacity to be able to look at this, because when we talk about the essentials, the applicability of this information, people want to know what's going on in the sky right now. How's that affecting me or me and this person? And so we've gotten so comprehensive in this class thus far. It's all, you're like immersed in it right now. So why not just take it that step further? And we're just going to do the most basic on how you can do bi-wheel synthesis, how you can take everything you've learned up until now and just take it that step further. And then realistically, there will be a separate course to go even deeper on that or whatever it is. We'll see what we decide to do. But that will be our last class. So that's coming up here. And then we're going to dive into the rest of season 3, and we've got guests lined up and all sorts of new topics and things, and we're freaking stoked. So yeah, if you haven't checked out our...
Be sure that you're liked and followed and subscribed and all the good stuff.
Yeah, sign up for the newsletter if you haven't yet. That was weekly, and then now it's bi-weekly, and you never know, it might be weekly again. Like whatever, we're doing what we're doing. Okay, we're doing what we're doing. And if you haven't checked out the new website yet, get on over there and do that. It's beautiful. We love it. And we're so proud. And yeah, thank you for being here. As always, thank you to our sponsor, Luna. You are the best. We love you. And Celestial Essentials is almost done. Wowzers. From conception, from dream to conception, from dream to execution.
Dream to reality.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I'm like just saying words. It's time to go. I must go now. Okay. Wonderful. We appreciate you so much. We'll see you next time. And until then, stay curious.
Woo!
I
got the wiggles.
You got the wiggles. I still got the nap time. I'm ready to take a nap, but that was awesome.
I'm so happy, dude. We're fucking doing stuff and it feels so good.